Hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Nicolas. I'm the CEO of Penbrothers. I hope everybody can hear me. And you guys are all having either a great day, a great evening, or a great morning, depending on where you are. But welcome. I'm going to talk today about a few experiences that I have made, that we have made over the last, let's say, 10, 15 years doing what we do here in the Philippines, which is building remote teams and helping companies around the world really get good talent here in the Philippines. And during that period of time, we have come across really some really interesting and challenging but avoidable mistakes that companies have done when building those teams, either with us or with others, stories that we have heard, experiences that we have been shared with us, but also things we have seen in our own company while helping our clients. And so this session is not just about theory. I mean, there's a lot of theory out there, but it's actually about actual stories that I'm going to share, with the hope, obviously, that it will help you, that it will give you some food for thought and some benefits, and that it will allow you to actually consider, when considering building a remote team, either by yourself or with a partner like ours, that you will avoid making some of the mistakes that we have seen that companies do. So let me go straight to the next slide. So today's goal, as I've said, is really to go over those five most common pitfalls that we have seen. Sorry, it's late over here. Some real experiences that I and my team, we really have seen or have been shared with us, and also how to walk away with a playbook that will enable you and help you to avoid those pitfalls, and also to have some fixes from the get-go, so that when you try it out, when you do it yourself, or even if you're thinking about doing it, you can already think about this type of pitfalls and how to mitigate them when you go ahead and try to do it yourself, be it with a partner like ours, anybody else, or by yourself. I mean, it's some companies do it also by themselves. So I hope that you will walk away from this seminar, and I will try to keep it concise and short. So please bear with me a little bit, with a really good kind of like playbook that will give you a lot of food for thought and a lot of ideas, and will be really helpful. So, well, I hope you will enjoy this. I cannot see any of you, so I'm doing this by talking to myself. So I hope you truly enjoy it, and looking forward also to the feedback afterwards. This is interesting. So as a next slide, I would actually appreciate, and please don't worry, this is all anonymous. There's we won't know who said what, but it would be really interesting if you guys can either take the QR code, take a picture of or look at the QR code with your phones, or put in the code and answer the questions we have there, because this will enable us also to give a little bit more feedback based on the questions you might have, and zoom into this. So these are actually the questions we are asking in the poll. Hope you all had enough time, but the QR code is also here. You can also go to slido.com and put in the number after the hashtag. And I see nobody's doing it, so that's let's see what happens. Let's give it a few minutes. There we go. Okay, great. So some people, 44%. Okay, we're still getting answers in. I'm going to give this a little bit of more time so we can really see what happens where, and what are the main concerns that you might be having. Interesting. As I said, this is anonymous, so please don't worry about answering the poll, and then let's look at that a little bit, and then use this also later on for the Q&A portion of this webinar to answer some of these questions and go a little bit deeper. But some of these, I can already tell you, are tackled in what I'm going to talk about in the next slides a little bit. Okay, great, thank you. Well, please keep answering. It will be really helpful. This is just a sample slide, so don't put too much emphasis on this. So Let me start with the first fail out of the 5 fails. So one of the things we see very often is actually the lack of clarity on the role. It's maybe not so much a lack of clarity on the job description itself, but it's actually the role and the need to actually have somebody and wanting to have almost like a warm body in your company. We need the help now. I need somebody now. So in that moment, what many times happens and what we have seen is that clients or companies choose to hire fast, to go through the whole recruitment process as quickly as possible, because they want just somebody, they need somebody right now. And that many times leads to a failure because it's not properly aligned. So the candidates as well as the job description are not properly aligned, and things have not properly been defined also and communicated to the candidate or to the employee. So for example, the scope of the deliverables, the proper onboarding plan, everything is done very, very quickly, from the recruitment to the onboarding to actually bringing the person in and throwing a lot of work at the new person. And there are different things that can be done, can be improved along the way, but it needs to slow down a little bit, so that instead of bringing a warm body and then have to fire that person really, or let that person go really fast, this likelihood of success is much higher, and you don't spend time actually doing something and then getting frustrating, and then maybe potentially trying it again but getting frustrating again. So it's better to actually take a step back, really think first. Sorry, let me go to the next slide, my apologies. There we go. So really think, what's the scope of the role and how can I set it up that it's really becomes successful, that the talent that I'm getting, be it in the Philippines, be it in other places, really has a chance to succeed in the role that I'm looking for, that I'm hiring this talent. So the simple things like defining what success actually looks like, coming in with a success matrix, KPIs, OKRs. I know we all talk about it, but it's not always done. And sometimes when we build remote teams, we think, well, let me just get somebody and throw the problem at this new person, instead of taking a step back and looking at how can I set this person up for success and make it easier for the person to be onboarded and onboard themselves. Like even during the interview process, during the recruitment cycle, like asking the right questions, having thought about them before, maybe testing some scenarios, aligning also on, we have seen a case actually recently where a person was brought in for a client, and lo and behold, the one thing which was missed on everybody's end, and it shouldn't have been missed by us, but it was also missed by us, was actually the working hours. So the person came in thinking it would have a 9 to 5 job, and the client wanted actually something different because of their own time zone. And that is an immediate miss and an immediate misalignment that then unfortunately fails. In this particular case, we were able to step in and fix it. But those are things that can easily derail the whole thing. And so we look at it and believe that there are 3 roles or 3 ways or various points that can really help define this. And again, we will share the slides with everybody who joined, and we can share more as the time comes. Okay, so another fail actually is the lack of onboarding. The lack of onboarding can be a challenge on various ways. So it can be a challenge on the understanding of the culture on both sides. Okay, when I talk about onboarding, I don't mean only the onboarding of the client, but also the onboarding of the employee. It's also the onboarding of the client, because if you do this for the first time, if this is a new experience for you, you also are not necessarily familiar with the idiosyncrasies of somebody in the Philippines, but vice versa. If it's the first time for that particular person to work with, let's say, a client in England or in Germany or in Australia, they also need to be onboarded. They also need to get a little bit of an explanation of what does it take actually to communicate correctly with somebody in Germany or work with somebody in England, and some of the idiosyncrasies. So the onboarding is very, very important. And there is a lot of different things there, but it's as simple as actually really trying to understand what are the things that can fail quickly, like cultural onboarding, regular feedback loops, maybe even having the job description or the actual SOPs that the process that the person is supposed to follow, not properly documented, or not clearly stated who that person needs to go back to if there is a problem. So the onboarding actually of the employee, of the client, and honestly, everything around it, including the service provider, if you're using a service provider, is very important. And so something that we believe helps, and we have working very well, is we call it the hypercare. So it's a much more deeper process that we split into bits and pieces. And if you do it by yourself, you can come up with something similar that really allows you to onboard the person, both sides, the employee and also the client, within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So there are check-in points, there are systems to really get a feedback loop and understand, is this working? Are we on the same page? Do we both understand each other? And it sounds like more work, and it might be initially a little bit more work, but it really helps, and it really helps set us up for success instead of actually being frustrated because, oh, I got somebody, it looked really good on paper, it started well, but then something went wrong because we missed something, or because we didn't clarify certain expectations from the get-go, or because it was the first time for that person to work with my culture. So things like that can easily derail the success of actually building a remote team. And this is one trick or one kind of approach of solving that and improving that from the get-go. Okay, so I mean, the culture really takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort. It doesn't just happen by chance. It needs some work, and it needs to be created. And that's where this onboarding comes in. Okay. The third fail that we see quite often is, honestly, let's say you go cheap, and cheap doesn't always give you what you're looking for. And if I saw correctly in the Slido questionnaire that you guys were so kind to answer, I think it was actually on the highest level. I don't have it in front of me right now, so my apologies. We will look at it one more time in a while. But I think that was one of the main concerns. So hiring somebody didn't work out, and that could really be because of the consideration that the best thing to achieve is really only cost saving. And let's be very upfront about this. Definitely when building a remote team, one of the reasons to build a remote team, one of the main reasons for most companies to build a remote team, exactly here, pick the cheapest option and it backfired, is because there is a labor arbitrage. The cost of a talent in the Philippines or in other countries like the Philippines is lower than in the high cost countries. And that's one of the main attractions of building a remote team. But when you look only at the costs, then it can very quickly backfire because you're not looking for quality. You're basically looking for just the biggest possible cost saving. But given that there is already a large difference between the salary wherever you are and wherever in the Philippines or other countries, there is an opportunity actually to avoid that mistake or to avoid that I was going to say complication, but it's not really a complication, but that issue, by actually looking at what does it take, what does it cost me to actually get the best possible candidate, the most with the right amount of experience, with the right amount of cultural fit or other fits. How much extra does this cost me? It might not be the cheapest solution, but it will be a better fit. It will most likely generate a much better ROI if you look at it from a return of investment perspective instead of a just cost saving perspective. Because when you build a remote team, you want that person to do something. Otherwise, you wouldn't be going for this idea, this solution. And whatever this person is going to do, that generates returns. So by really thinking about it more from a perspective of the return on investment, not just the price, and really balancing that out, okay, yes, it lowers my cost or is a lower cost option, but what's the right amount of quality that I need to look for and I need to have, and what's also the support needed. So very honestly, there is also a component of making this a success by partnering with the right partner, us being one of them, but there are others and good ones, that will help you also make this a success. For example, by being on your side, by being your HR business partner when building those teams, by highlighting potential pitfalls, by actually checking in with the team that you're building and understanding, okay, what's happening there, and feeding this back to you. So there are different things that you can do. Go for quality, don't go for only cost, and also either build that culture or work with a service provider who can help you build this. Okay, hope this was also something, and we have seen this. This, unfortunately, we have seen quite a lot, and it's a very easily avoidable mistake that can be avoided. And I think I went in circles with avoiding. Okay, the fourth fail. This is interesting because we have seen this. Some companies and some people we have talked to look at it and say like, yeah, well, I would just go for a freelancer. It's I don't need a partner. I don't need somebody to help me. I will just go to one of the freelance platforms and go for a freelancer. And the freelancer will behave and act and be the same as if I would have an actual team that is really fully dedicated to me, or a person that is fully dedicated to me. And that, unfortunately, can be easily a fail because you can't avoid certain things. A freelancer might not just have you as a client. They might have various clients and doing various projects at the same time. So by that moment, you might not be the top priority. You might be one of many things they're doing. The other thing, and that we also seen one person came to us and said like, well, I need to actually have the team because my freelancers were not just working for others, they were actually working for my competition. So they were doing projects for me, but they were also doing projects for my competitors. And obviously that's a big no-no and a big problem and a big concern. So this is something where freelancing can be very successful in certain ways. And there are many, many people doing freelancing and many companies working with freelancers, but it can also backfire if some of the pitfalls, some of the challenges are not properly considered. So yes. And also here in the Philippines, freelancers can also become a problem later on once people start having families or they want to travel. Because if you're a freelancer, you don't have a certificate of employment, so you can't get a visa for traveling outside of the Philippines, and so on and so forth. So there's all kinds of other challenges that then the freelancer will have that might also not be conducive for the freelancer to be super dedicated and hardworking for whatever project you were trying to get the freelancer to work for. So my clicking is not working. Okay. So some of the fix here is really look at the freelancers less as an employee or as an extension of your team and more as a vendor. And if you start looking at them as a vendor, you can start avoiding some of the challenges because you will start treating them a little bit different. You will maybe even vet them a little bit different and even set different expectations. And then there's always the part of that is the legal and the data controls and legal compliance. I mean, if somebody works for you and is doing a project for you, but at the same time doing a similar project for your competition, that can become very quickly a problem on IP levels and other things, confidential information and so on and so forth. There's also access and security. So all things that, again, a partner can help you with, or ideally should be really able to help you with, so that you can mitigate all those risks and all those challenges by working with somebody. Okay. So this one, as I said, it's 5 fails. And so this one, for my perspective, is actually the biggest one. It's really having, and it's the biggest one, and I will explain this a little bit more, but this one to me is very frustrating and unfortunate because you might actually have a really good talent, but it fails because of visibility. It fails because, and this is part of what I mentioned before, the onboarding, setting expectations, maybe even working with a partner who can help you be like an HR business partner, checking in on your behalf and feeding back that information, because you might actually have a really good talent, somebody who can really do the job and would actually excel if certain things that we already talked about would have been set up in a better way or thought through, and also the visibility. So the check-ins, the making sure that you or we know what's actually happening, that we in our case in particular help our clients really set up, okay, what are your KPIs, what are your OKRs, what are your expectations? Let's do monthly check-ins with the employee and with you, so that we can really bridge that visibility gap and ensure that it is actually working the best way possible, and that if the talent itself can also really bloom and deliver the job you're actually looking for, that what you initially hired the person. So really, those the visibility is, and there are various elements to that, is a really interesting thing that can be fixed. You can set it up yourself, you can work with a partner. It's really about bridging that gap that can happen very quickly by having somebody remotely, and thereby enabling that person to really excel. Because more often than not, people are good and people want to do a good job. They want to really excel in what they're doing. Otherwise, they like it and they want to make the client or the end party happy. So building on that visibility and improving that can really be a way success on both sides, on the sides of, on your side or the client side, and also the employee side. Um, so for example, weekly check-ins, monthly check-ins, be very clear about the task, the KPIs, the communication. There are also some cultural elements with working with remote teams, be it, for example, the Philippines. Like, Filipinos do behave a little bit different and act different, and also communicate back concerns, challenges differently than, for example, an American would do, or a German would do, or a Mexican or a Colombian would do. I'm half South American, so I can speak a little bit about that. So we over there communicate a little bit more. I wouldn't call it honest, because I think honesty is always there, but maybe a little bit more brutal and in your face. So again, bridging all those things can really help to make the whole thing a success and not have it as a failure. So those are the 5 main points that we have come across. There are unfortunately many more, and we really try to support our clients and our partners with all of them the best way possible. But these are the main 5, and that's what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. Let me go, yeah, to this quote. So the hiring doesn't fail because of the talent. It can fail because of the talent, but if the recruitment is done properly, if the onboarding is done properly, if then the continuous support is really there, or the systems are there that you yourself set up, if you don't want a partner to do it with you, then it shouldn't be a fail. It can be mitigated. So if you get the structure right, the talent will thrive. And we have seen this. We have clients that have been with us from the beginning of our start, since 2014. So this is 11 plus years by now. And we have employees who started with the same client and have also been there since those 11 years and grown since those 11 years and become senior managers. And that's really a beauty to see that, because you can see, if you do it right, if you set it up correctly, it can really excel and be phenomenal and be really an amazing contribution to your core team, wherever in the world your core team might be. And we have also seen this, and we have seen this quite a lot if done correctly. And that's something we really, really enjoy helping with. Okay, so we will share. You can actually download in here right now, but we will also send it to everybody who joined the seminar. We will also, you can book a free discovery call. Actually, our discovery calls are always free, just to put it out there. We don't charge for that. We believe that we need to actually explain and prove the value of building a remote team. So please feel free to reach out and to book this, and or to just peruse the beginner's guide that we will share with everybody. And yeah, and I hope this was really helpful. I hope this was concise. I hope I didn't ramble too much, and looking forward to the Q&As. Thank you so much. My team will help me, so I can answer Q&As based on what will be asked. So the first question is, how do you manage cultural differences without creating distrust or misunderstandings? I think that's a very good question, and it's actually a combination of cultural sensibility, of really trying to bridge that gap. We have along our career, so to speak, used different tools. And one of the things we actually do is also do a cultural mapping between the culture, our culture here in the Philippines, because all our employees, with very minor exceptions, are Filipinos, but all based in the Philippines, and the culture of the client or the person the employee reports to with our client. And then we map that and we explain it, and we explain it to both parties. We explain it to the employee, like, listen, these are the things you need to look out for because you're going to work. Again, I'm half South American and I'm also half German, so let me use the German side. You're going to report to a German. They want to be upfront, they want things to be clear, they want things on time. But at the same time, we also go back to the client and explain to them, like, listen, you're going to work with a Filipino, so let us explain a little bit also, and it's the first time for you, so let me explain a little bit about that. And if you do it correctly and if you do it transparently, you actually can avoid the whole creating distrust. Misunderstandings can happen, and it's about bridging them and stepping in and helping out. But ideally, you really, from the get-go, by being transparent, by explaining and helping, you can avoid the distrust. Now, obviously, if you go in there and say, like, well, you're going to work with a German, and I'm purposely using that direction. And Germans are just always harsh, always hard, and just then you automatically set the stage for distrust. So you can avoid that by actually completely phrasing this differently. So we help with that, and I think it's very important actually because different cultures do work in different ways and do have slight different expectations or slight different approaches to how things are communicated, how they want things to be put front and center, or maybe not, and things like that. Okay, so the second question is, what made me decide to start an offshoring business specifically? I was working for a Japanese company for the longest time, first in Japan, and part of my work out of Japan was to actually build for the Japanese company with a team. I was part of a team, companies in Southeast Asia. And over time, I specialized myself in the Philippines for various reasons, but partially also because I really enjoyed working with Filipinos. I really enjoyed the teams we built here in the Philippines with Filipinos, and the quality of what we were building, and really the dedication of the people in our teams. Because we actually set up over time 3 companies here in the Philippines, and that experience and that being embedded in it really gave me this idea, well, why don't we also do something like that? In the sense, I have had this amazing experience with Filipinos. Can I also share that experience or enable other companies outside of the Philippines to build teams in the Philippines and have a similar experience? That was the one side of the equation. The other side of the equation was, at the same time, when I came for the first time in 2005, there was still, and there still is, but at that time it was even more, the brain drain out of the Philippines, people having to leave to get certain types of jobs or certain roles or certain experiences. And I always thought, well, startups, SMEs, there's a lot of really interesting jobs out there. People are looking to hire people. Can we bring this to the Philippines and thereby also enable Filipinos to get really interesting jobs with startups, with young companies, with SMEs, without having to actually leave the Philippines? And now after COVID, many times actually without having to leave your province. So it's those two sides that we thought, and I say we specifically, so it was me and my co-founder, of how do we bridge this? How do we create something that adds value both to the clients as well as to the Filipinos? And for me, it was really that experience with working with Filipinos before we set up Penbrothers in 2014 that was really the main driver. The experience, the great experience. The next question is, to build a remote customer service team, would you recommend hiring a supervisor based in Manila as well as CEFs reps to bridge cultural differences, time zones, etc.? I would suggest reach out to us. Yes, it can be. It depends on what type of team you're trying to build. If it's a certain amount of people immediately. I mean, if you're going to hire one person to start with, I wouldn't necessarily hire a supervisor. But if you're trying to build over a certain amount of time a slightly larger team, and we just helped another client do this recently. They needed to build a team of 5 people. And so what we did is actually we really looked at the job descriptions. We looked at the roles they were trying to find here in the Philippines, and also at how they wanted to manage it, and then came up with a structure where we really recommended, like, yes, get a supervisor. This is the minimum amount of experience we believe that supervisor should have, and this is how the team should be structured underneath that supervisor, so that it can also cover the time zones they wanted to have and the experience they wanted to have. So yes, it can be helpful, but it doesn't always have to be. So that's really more of a specific case-by-case question, and we're happy to help you answer that question. Please feel free to reach out. But yes and no, but please reach out. Happy to do that, and we help think this through. We help really go deeper and understand, well, what is actually what I need based on the needs, or what I need to build in the Philippines based on the needs that I have in what I'm trying to build. So yes, good question though. Sorry that it's not a yes or a no, it's both. It can be both. Next question, is offshoring worth it if you're basically doubling your workload with onboarding and coordination? I don't think you double your workload. And I think, yes, transparently speaking, there is a little bit more work at the beginning, specifically if it's something new and you're building a new team and you're setting up that cadence of check-ins, of working with the person or the team, working also with a service provider. Let's take the assumption that is us. So there is a little bit of more work at the beginning. But I think, honestly speaking, my experience, even when I was working in Japan or working somewhere else, every time you hire somebody and you bring a new person into your team, be it on site or remote, there's always a component of change. There's always a component of adjustment. Things need to be rejiggled, workloads need to be readjusted, reporting lines potentially. You still need to sit down and define, okay, what are my expectations for you and your KPIs? And exactly the same applies when you do it remotely. I think when you do it remotely, it can become a little bit more challenging, either time zone wise or distance wise, because everything is done online. But again, that's where somebody like us comes in to help you ideate it through, think it through, and really execute it in a way that it doesn't take so much time. It's definitely not a doubling of your workload. Now, like everything, same when you do it in your own back office, so to speak, or back up when I mean in your own, let's say, location. Yes, there is an increase of work when you set it up, but then if things are done correctly and well done, then it goes back down to what it used to be before. It shouldn't really add that much work on a continuous basis, if done correctly. Okay, great. That was the last question. I hope this was helpful. I hope all of you had got some use out of this and some information out of this. Happy to help. We are always here to help. And thank you so much for making the time to listen to me. Thank you.